People tell you that age brings peace. In my experience, it brings clarity. At 68 years old, I had learned to separate noise from signal the way a jeweler separates flaws from diamonds. You stop reacting to every shadow that moves around you. You start paying attention to the ones that move toward you with purpose. The morning it happened, the air smelled like polished marble and brewed espresso. The scent of the lobby in our flagship hotel. The Miravera Grand had been the beating heart of my life's work for almost 3 decades. A luxury hotel and resort group spread across coasts and countries, built brick by brick, signature by signature. And that morning I was meant to sign one more. A partnership projected to bring in over $500 million in long-term investment. Not a gamble, a guarantee. Years of negotiation, due diligence, and promises that had turned into handshakes and contracts. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments where are you watching from. It helps more than you know. My son-in-law greeted me in the executive lounge. He moved like someone who had practiced confidence in front of a mirror. Precise posture, easy smile. He carried 2 paper cups, steam curling from the lids. "Thought you might need this," he said. "Long morning." His voice was smooth. Too smooth. I reached for the cup, but before my hand closed around it, I noticed how warm it was. Almost hot enough to burn. He knew I never drank it that way. I preferred it warm, never scalding. Details matter, they always have. He insisted again, nudging it closer. "Extra mild. Just how you like it." It wasn't. I could smell it from where I stood. An undertone that didn't belong. Something too floral, too heavy. Coffee should be sharp. This smelled like something meant to cover another scent. Behind him, the elevators opened. My secretary, Lila, stepped out. Her heels barely making a sound on the marble. She was young, observant, sharper than she let on. She paused when she saw us. Something passing through her eyes too quickly to catch unless you knew how to see it. She approached, smiled politely, then leaned in under the guise of adjusting the collar of my suit. Her voice barely existed. "Do not drink that," she whispered. My pulse didn't spike. Panic is for people who haven't practiced survival. I thanked my son-in-law, accepted the cup, and motioned toward the boardroom. He looked relieved, as if something crucial had just gone right for him. We walked down the hall together, past portraits of founders and past investors. He talked about the meeting, about our guests flying in from overseas, about how proud my daughter was. His words flowed like a speech he'd memorized. I listened, but not to the content. I listened to the spaces between the sentences. Lila walked slightly behind us, her silence louder than anything he said. Inside the boardroom, the table gleamed like a runway. Contracts placed at each seat. Welcome packets, customized pens, tiny bottles of spring water arranged with military precision. I had built an empire on details like that, which is why one detail screamed louder than the rest. An additional seat at the far end of the table. Not for me, not for any investor. The place card was face down, like an answer waiting to be revealed. I set the coffee down, didn't drink. My son-in-law hovered. "Try it before it cools," he said, too casual. "You should be comfortable going in." He needed me weak, fogged, slowed. Why? That question was heavier than any accusation. I glanced at Lila. Her eyes flickered toward the coffee, then toward the door. A warning, a path, a choice. I lifted the cup, not to drink it, to smell it. A hint of bitterness sat beneath the surface like a bruise beneath skin. Not cyanide, not poison, something else. Something meant to alter perception, not end it. A sedative. Fast, clean, hard to trace. In a meeting like this, it would ruin me. Slurred speech, loss of focus, hesitation. Enough to make a board reconsider a signature. Enough to frame me as unfit to continue leading a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. And him, he would slide into my seat like it had been waiting for him. I set the cup back down and smiled. "Later," I said. In that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in him before. Fear, not of being caught, of being seen through. And that was the moment I knew the coffee was not the crime. It was the introduction. Because when someone tries to alter your mind before a meeting, it means the meeting was never meant to be your victory in the first place. They want your seat, your signature, your silence. The coffee was only step one, and what happened when the doors finally closed around that boardroom table made me realize the coffee wasn't even the beginning of their plan. It was just the test to see if I was paying attention. The boardroom filled slowly, the way storms gather. Old friends, new partners, representatives from private equity groups who smelled of polished leather and aggressive ambition. Their suits looked like they cost more than some people earned in a year, and their smiles never reached their eyes. I had built this company from a boutique hotel with 40 rooms near the waterfront into a global hospitality brand. 36 properties, 8 countries, thousands of employees. A legacy that could outlive me if handled correctly, which is why the unease in my ribs felt like a warning bell, not nerves. My son-in-law took a seat at my right side instead of across from me, a placement that implied alignment, unity, agreement. He was neither. The coffee sat in front of me like a loaded weapon. Contracts were distributed, signatures flagged, pages tabbed for convenience, every detail prepared, as if the outcome had already been decided. Before anything began, I leaned slightly toward Lila. "Who else knows?" I murmured. She didn't meet my eyes. "I don't know. I only overheard something in the service foyer." "What kind of something?" "Something about influence, repositioning leadership. They didn't know I was there." She stepped away, her face composed. Only her hands betrayed tension, trembling lightly when she adjusted the projector. People underestimate secretaries. They think proximity is obedience instead of insight. They think being quiet means being unaware. Those people don't last long around me. The meeting started with pleasantries. An investor from Madrid praised our occupancy rates. Someone from a luxury conglomerate complimented brand synergy, words that meant nothing without loyalty behind them. Then came the shift. A representative from one of our partner groups cleared his throat and slid a packet forward. "I hope you don't mind," he said. "We took the liberty of preparing an amendment, a minor adjustment to the governance structure. Clarity for future collaboration. Minor. Clarity. Future collaboration. The language of theft." I opened the binder. The words stared up at me like teeth. Interim co-executive authority. Contingency transition clause. Competency review protocol. All written to sound like protection. All designed to remove me without saying the word retire. My signature would have been consent. My signature would have been surrender. My son-in-law watched me read, his expression politely blank. That was when I realized this wasn't just ambition. This was rehearsal. They expected me to stumble, to slur, to lose focus. They expected the sedative to dig into my veins and hollow me out until they could call a vote. They hadn't planned for a secretary who listened where she wasn't meant to. They hadn't planned for me staying awake. When I closed the binder, the room went quiet. "Before we continue," I said, voice steady, "I'd like to address something." My son-in-law leaned forward. "We can handle questions later. The agenda—" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I will not sign this," I said, tapping the clause, "because this was written to remove me under the assumption I would be unable to respond in real time." Eyes shifted around the table. A few glances, a few stiffened shoulders. Silence, sharp as glass. "I was handed a drink this morning," I continued. "One that did not smell like coffee. One my doctor would confirm could have caused confusion, disorientation, and cognitive impairment." My son-in-law's voice cracked. "That's a misunderstanding." "Is it?" I asked. I pushed the coffee cup toward him, the lid still sealed. The room's attention narrowed to a single point, like the world had shrunk to the space between us. "Drink it," I said gently. He froze. He did not reach for it. That was enough. Panic flickered in his eyes, a spark of something feral beneath the practiced charm. He reached for the binder instead, pretending to flip pages, pretending this was still about negotiations. It wasn't. The investors exchanged looks, calculations forming behind their eyes. They hadn't signed up for scandal. They wanted stability, not headlines. Someone stood. Someone else packed a briefcase. The meeting disintegrated in under 60 seconds, dissolving like sugar in hot water. My son-in-law stayed seated. His confidence leaked away like air from a punctured tire. "You don't know what you're doing," he said finally. "You can't run this forever. You're getting older. You need support." "I do," I said, "just not yours." I gathered the contracts, All 42 pages. This meeting is adjourned, I said. Lila opened the door for me. The hinges creaked like a curtain closing on an act. As I left, I knew two things. 1. This wasn't over. 2. He had just shown his hand too soon. And if someone is willing to drug you to push you out of a boardroom, it means the next move won't be professional. It will be personal. Night settles differently when trust has been broken. That evening, after the meeting disintegrated, I returned to my office at the top floor of the Miravera Grand. The city glittered beneath the panoramic windows, neon and headlights reflecting against the glass like fractured constellations. I had always loved that view. It made the world feel manageable even on the worst days. But that night, the skyline looked like a warning. My office door was ajar. Not open, not closed. Just enough to say someone wanted me to see it. I pushed it gently. The lights came on in stages, soft pools of illumination spreading across the dark wood floors. Everything looked normal at first glance. The awards, the framed architectural sketches of each hotel I had built, the globe sculpture in the corner frozen mid-turn. But my desk told another story. A single folder sat in the center. Crisp, new, not from my filing system. A folder that shouldn't exist. I approached but did not touch it. Instead, I checked the rest of the room. Desk drawers, undisturbed. Cabinets, locked. Safe, untouched. Windows, latched. Only then did I return to the folder. Inside were photocopies of medical evaluations. Not mine, but they had my name typed at the top. Cognitive decline, confusion, potential early-stage dementia. Recommended evaluation for guardianship consideration. Restricted executive decision-making authority. All forged. Professionally. Whoever drafted them understood how to mimic clinical tone. Someone who had resources. Someone who understood not just paperwork, but how paperwork becomes proof if no one challenges it. There were signatures at the bottom. Doctors I had never met. Facilities I had never visited. And attached to the back like a rotten cherry on top of a poisoned sundae, a printed email draft. From me, to the board, stating I intended to step back due to private medical concerns. All it lacked was a timestamp. Someone planned to send it on my behalf. Someone planned to seal the coffin before I even knew a funeral was happening. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Paper trails work faster than coffee. Sleep tight. I stared at the screen. Not the message. The punctuation, no signature, no attempt at concealment. That was arrogance, not fear. I screenshotted everything, forwarded it to a private attorney I trusted like a second spine, then deleted the thread. The intercom clicked. Lila's voice came through. "Sir, are you still here?" "Yes. I didn't want to leave without telling you something," she said, voice low. "Your son-in-law asked for access to archives. Digital and physical." "When?" "Last week. He said he was helping compile materials for the investor summit. He gave your daughter's name as authorization." My daughter? My only child? A spear of cold pressed against my ribs. Was she involved? Lila hesitated. "I don't know," she answered, and that honesty was worth more than any loyalty. "But she's visiting him tonight. They left the hotel 10 minutes ago together." I exhaled slowly. This was no longer corporate maneuvering, this was a siege. "Thank you, Lila, go home, stay quiet." She didn't argue, she simply said, "Be careful." I left the office with the folder under my arm and the truth settling into my bones. If someone is willing to fabricate mental decline, it means they want control of more than a company. They want control of the person who built it. They want power of attorney, guardianship papers, a legal mechanism to place me beneath them. A leash designed to look like a safety net. In that moment, I understood that the boardroom had only been a rehearsal. The real performance was meant to take place in court, and the audience would be judges, not investors. As I reached the parking garage, my car key refused to respond. The vehicle didn't unlock. I walked around to the front and saw why. All 4 tires were flat, not slashed, deflated. Quiet sabotage. The kind that delays you without giving you evidence to report. The kind that buys time. Someone needed me somewhere else. Someone needed me off balance. Someone needed me late. I dialed a car service, requested a private driver, and waited. A voice echoed across the concrete. "You really should have just retired." My son-in-law stepped out from behind a pillar, hands in his pockets, expression carved from confidence he hadn't earned. He didn't look like a villain. That's the problem with betrayal. It rarely looks like theater. It looks like family. "Walk away," he said. "It'll be easier for everyone. For you, maybe," I replied, "for all of us. My wife is terrified you'll embarrass her as you fall apart. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I tilted my head. "Then why drug the coffee?" His jaw tightened. I had struck the vein. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because if he spoke, even for a second, he would tell the truth. And that was the only thing he couldn't risk. The car arrived. I got in, without another word. As we pulled away, I watched him shrink in the rear window, his figure dissolving into the garage shadows. This wasn't self-preservation for him. This was hunger. And people who hunger for power don't stop when they're full. They stop when they're fed by force. There is a particular kind of silence in an empty hotel at night. Not loneliness, not quiet. A held breath, as if the building itself is waiting to see who it serves next. I went to a satellite office across town, a location few people knew I still used. It was part of our original headquarters before expansion. Small, unfashionable, but connected directly to the internal system. A leftover branch from the early days of the Miravera Grand, back when we were just renovating abandoned properties and hoping guests would show up. I powered up the terminal. The hum of fans, the flicker of monitors, the familiarity of a tool built to protect me. The login accepted my credentials. Barely. The screen flashed a notification. Password change requested by me, except I had never made that request. I canceled the process, input a secondary authorization key, and forced a trace. 2 IP addresses appeared on the screen. One from our flagship hotel. Expected. The second from a residential address on the outskirts of the city. Unexpected. That address mattered. Because it belonged to my daughter. Or more accurately, the home she shared with the man who handed me coffee that morning. The timestamp showed multiple logins. 3 attempts, then a successful entry. All aimed at HR databases, all targeting internal compliance documents, all downloading employee certifications, medical files, and contracts with physicians. Forgeries don't start in basements with bad printers. They start with legitimate documents twisted at the edges. My son-in-law wasn't improvising. He was building a narrative where I was unfit, and he was stepping in to save the company from me. A hero's story. A fraud wearing the costume of responsibility. I traced deeper, digging through layers of activity. Then I found it. A video file. Not long. 17 seconds. It was me, or rather it looked like me. Slumped in a chair in my office, eyes unfocused, voice slurred, saying phrases I would never say. "I cannot keep up anymore. I get confused in meetings. I need someone else to step in." The footage was a deep fake. Not perfect, but convincing enough to deceive someone who wanted to believe it. The edges flickered. The light didn't match the room's real shape. The voice cadence was slightly off, like it was stitched together from breaths instead of sentences. They planned to submit it during a competency hearing, with forged medical evaluations, with drugged coffee, with a resignation email. They weren't planning to remove me. They were planning to erase me. I sat back, letting the weight settle, not as fear, but as clarity. They weren't rushing. They were orchestrating. Every piece placed like a chess match where I was never meant to see the board. My phone rang. Unknown caller. I answered, silent. A breath. Then Lila's voice. "I didn't call to talk," she said. "Just listen. Your daughter was in the room with him during the forgeries. I saw the footage." She nodded. She knew. Silence stretched like a rope between us. "Thank you," I said softly. "I'm sorry," she replied. She hung up. I stared at the wall until the shapes blurred. My daughter, my only child, aligning herself with a man who would drug me and bury my legacy in ink. She didn't inherit my vision. She inherited my empire, and she didn't want to wait. I opened secured archives, passwords I hadn't used in years, protocols designed for crises, compliance audits, financial triggers, talent contracts, and then Clause 179, a kill switch in the governance structure. My design, my protection. If attempted hostile acquisition or medically coerced transfer of authority was detected, ownership froze, assets locked. All signatures required a neutral third-party oversight committee. It was built for enemies, not family. The system asked for confirmation. I hovered over the keys. Executing this clause would scorch the earth. It would freeze accounts. It would suspend my daughter's access. It would strip my son-in-law's influence. It would call for a private legal review. It would also expose the deepfake to forensic analysis. The truth would resurface. But so would every fracture in the family. My hand shook, not from weakness, from the weight of choosing war over peace. But peace was never an option, not when someone decides you are more useful broken. I activated the clause. A message appeared. Authority lock engaged. Proceed to verification. Before I logged out, I pulled up the security cameras in the hotel's underground garage. Footage from earlier. Me, leaving. My son-in-law watching. But right before that, another clip. Different angle. Him, letting air out of my tires himself. No gloves, no mask. He wanted me to find the damage. He wanted me to know. Because intimidation isn't effective if the target can't identify the source. It wasn't a warning. It was a countdown. By the time I left the office, the city felt smaller, every shadow sharper, every possibility more defined. If they believed I was going to be passive, they misunderstood something fundamental. At 68, I wasn't fading. I was remembering. Remembering I had built this empire as a fortress, not a home. And fortresses are designed to be defended. I didn't go home that night. Home wasn't safe anymore. Not because of walls or locks or alarms. Those can be replaced. Because the idea of home, the people who lived inside it, had turned into something else. I drove to my daughter's house just before dawn. The street was quiet. The world caught between darkness and responsibility. A time when truths are hardest to hide. Her porch light was on. Like she was expecting someone. Maybe she was. I rang the bell once. She opened the door with the same expression she had as a child when she was caught somewhere between guilt and defense. Eyes already wet, chin already lifting. "Dad," she breathed. No embrace, no invitation. A single word trying to act like a bridge. "Where is he?" I asked. "In the kitchen." I stepped inside. The house smelled like stale coffee and polished stone, like someone had tried to clean chaos by wiping surfaces instead of solving the mess that caused them. He stood at the kitchen island. No smile this time, just calculation. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "You should stop offering me beverages," I replied. A crack in his mask, small, but real. My daughter moved to his side. Instinct, not decision. She folded her arms, mirroring his stance. Mirroring is a psychological tell. It's what people do when they've chosen a side. I turned to her, not him. "I saw the footage," I said. She flinched. "He didn't. Those fake documents won't hold in court," I continued, voice low. "The digital footprint is sloppy. The metadata betrays your edits. The deepfake flickers on frame 9, frame 14, and frame 16. The lighting doesn't match. The cadence is wrong." Her voice cracked. "That wasn't my idea." "Maybe not," I said. "But you didn't stop it." She stared at the floor. He stepped forward. "This company needs new leadership. Investors know it. Employees know it. You're clinging to something that's bigger than you now." "Bigger than me," I repeated. "I remember when you submitted a pitch to a boutique hotel group and spelled concierge incorrectly in the email subject line." His jaw tightened. "You built this company for her," he said, nodding toward my daughter. "But you don't trust her to take it. You only trust systems, clauses, locks, control mechanisms. That's how you protect what matters. That's how you isolate yourself." He wasn't wrong, but he wasn't right either, because isolation and protection aren't the same thing. One is a prison. The other is a fortress. My daughter finally spoke. Her voice was a tremor dressed as confidence. "I just wanted to grow into it," she said. "I thought you'd never hand it over. I thought you'd die behind the desk rather than let me lead. And you thought forging mental decline was the answer?" I asked softly. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away like it was evidence. "I thought," she whispered, "if they believed you needed help, I could help. We could transition slowly. I never wanted... Her gaze flicked to him, fear slicing through her certainty. I never wanted it like this. I looked at her husband. You drugged my coffee. He didn't deny it. You tried to stage cognitive failure. Silence. You orchestrated digital fraud. Nothing. You deflated my tires. His lips twitched. Flat tires aren't a crime. No, I said, but they're a message. I reached into my coat and set a folder on the counter. Clause 179. Asset freeze. Third-party audit, authority lock, notification to external counsel, the kill switch. His face drained of color. You activated it, he said, voice barely audible. I did. You'll destroy everything. No, I said, I'll preserve it. Even if preservation means burning the rot out of the foundation. My daughter looked at me like a child again. Not small, just unguarded. What happens now? She asked. That depends, I answered. Do you want to lead, or did you only want to own? A question that separates heirs from thieves. The kitchen went quiet. Her husband stepped back, realizing the conversation no longer included him. He wasn't the center. He was the catalyst. He chose the wrong battlefield. Leave, I told him. He scoffed. You can't. I can, I said. The board will vote in 72 hours. They will see every file, every timestamp, and after that, your access is revoked. He looked at my daughter, expecting support. She didn't move. His voice broke. You'll be alone without me. She exhaled. Maybe that's what I need. Fear flickered across his expression. The fear of someone who realizes the person they manipulated has begun to think independently. He grabbed his coat, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. My daughter sank into a chair. I didn't know how to stop it, she whispered. You start by telling the truth, I said, and you do it before the world finds it for you. She nodded, trembling. Outside, a car engine roared. He was gone. But absence doesn't mean victory. Absence means regrouping. And people willing to drug. Someone for power don't vanish. They calculate. They return. They escalate. Because if they failed once, they have to decide whether failure ends them or fuels them. 3 days, 72 hours. Time can feel like sand through fingers or steel pillars in the spine depending on what you stand to lose. For me, those 3 days were not spent waiting. They were spent preparing. My attorney assembled a team. Digital forensic analysts, medical consultants, corporate defense specialists. They dissected every file, every login, every fabrication. They traced timestamps, metadata anomalies, and audio modulation discrepancies in the deepfake. They printed the forged paperwork on transparency sheets and layered them under UV lamps to expose mismatched watermarks. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accuracy. The board meeting reconvened on a rainy morning. The sky pressed against the glass like it wanted to listen. I walked into the conference room flanked by calm, not fear. Lila walked beside me carrying a slim case of documents. My daughter sat near the end of the table, hands folded, eyes red but steady. She wasn't a co-conspirator anymore. She was a witness. And my son-in-law? He was already there, standing, jaw set, a smile stretched thin as threadbare cloth. Good morning, he said, voice too loud. The board members didn't respond. They were waiting. The lead attorney from the audit committee gestured to me. Please proceed. I didn't give a speech. Speeches beg for belief. Evidence demands it. I placed the deepfake recording on the screen first. A side-by-side comparison. Real footage of me speaking in recorded meetings versus the counterfeit. Analysts paused frames highlighting pixel warping, mismatched lighting angles, and asynchronous lip patterns. The audio waveform betrayed spliced syllables, peaks where there should have been valleys. Synthetic timbre layered beneath my tone. They could have explained it to a child. They explained it to a board of billionaires. Then the medical documents. Forgeries revealed by inconsistent font families, incorrect diagnostic codes, impossible dates of service, and a physician's signature traced from a medical brochure printed 3 years ago. Then the coffee. Not poison, something else. A sedative with a half-life short enough to clear before a blood test. A drug used commonly in high-pressure emergency rooms to calm violent patients. Administered orally, undetectable after 6 hours. perfect for making someone appear confused, not hospitalized. My son-in-law finally broke. "This is a setup," he snapped. "He's framing me. He's spinning stories because he's afraid to retire." The room didn't move. Even my daughter didn't blink. I slid one final paper across the table, a printed transcript of his message to my phone. Paper trails work faster than coffee, recovered from a cloud backup he didn't know still existed. His fingerprints on the device confirmed the deletion attempt. His face drained of color. Fear is quiet when it's real. He reached for my daughter's hand. She moved it away. For the first time, he understood what losing control feels like. The board voted, unanimous. He was removed from any present or future association with the company. A restraining order filed, a criminal investigation opened, his assets frozen pending inquiry. My daughter stood as the vote concluded. "I want to make things right," she said. There was no applause. Redemption isn't a performance, it's repetition, consistency, proof. I nodded once. "We rebuild," I said, "but we rebuild carefully." Outside, the rain stopped. Not dramatically, just enough to change the sound of the world. As the room emptied, Lila approached. "You held the line," she said. "No," I replied. "The line held me. I placed it there for a reason. Sometimes survival isn't strength, sometimes it is preparation." My son-in-law was escorted out, anger flickering in his eyes like a flame searching for oxygen. But he wouldn't find fuel here. Not anymore. The company continued. The hotels stayed open. Reservations kept coming. The world didn't collapse. Because empires don't fall from storms, they fall from neglect. And mine was no longer unattended. I returned to my office, sat down and breathed. Not relief, alignment. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting. I was living. And as I watched the city move beneath me, I realized something. They never needed to drug me to make me give up control. All they ever needed was for me to stop paying attention. They underestimated me once. They won't again. They can't. Because now I've seen what ambition looks like when it forgets its own humanity. And I know the cost of protecting the legacy I built. That cost is vigilance. And vigilance is my inheritance to myself. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.